Howdy folks, welcome back to the channel. Today's video is going to be all about the ProcCo Rat. One of my favorite distortion pedals. It just sounds like rock and roll to me. I love this thing. But as much as it has a great aggressive distortion tone, there's also some cool blues overdrive kind of tones hidden in here. And today I'm going to do a couple mods to this to try to make it into the ultimate blues pedal. Okay, today's video is going to be a little bit more of a long form video where I kind of walk through how I'm going to mod this. But for starters, the very first thing you want to do is test your Rat. Make sure everything works. Even if you played this thing last week, make sure everything works because you always want to do that before you mod anything. And then you're going to need a few parts to do this mod. Now you could do one of these mods, you could do both of these mods. You could make them permanent if you really like the sound samples. But anyway, what you're going to need is two dual pole, dual throw switches like this. And you can see these are the short bat ones, but it doesn't matter. Long bats will work perfectly fine too. But you need dual pull, dual throw, two position switches like that. You're going to need a 10K resistor. That's going to go to one of the switches. You're going to need two red LEDs. And this is effectively going to make this into a turbo Rat. If you're familiar with the turbo Rat, it used LEDs instead of traditional diodes. And traditionally the Rat uses a 1N4148 diode, actually two of them. I went ahead and I had some on hand, so I'm gonna just use new diodes. You can recycle the ones that are in there, so you don't need these, but I think it's gonna be a little easier. That's basically all the parts that you need. It's pretty simple. First things first, let's get this baby apart. Okay, so now our Rat is apart. As you can see, we've got access to all the different parts. Now you notice it does have a AC connector here, but as you see, the nut for it is on the inside. So if you want to take that off, you can desolder these wires from there, and then of course the whole thing will just pull through, and then you can just leave this in the case if that's what you want to do. I'm just going to attempt to work on it like this. What we're going to do is two mods. So the first mod, I call it the McPherson mod, and I don't know if that's what it's actually called, if it has a name, but Waylon McPherson, and he is a great channel. If you aren't familiar with this channel, I will link it up over here for you. But Waylon figured out that if you take a 10K potentiometer and put it in line with this pot like this, it allows you to it puts more resistance in there, so it allows you to kind of fine tune the lower end. It doesn't get as hot, it won't go as far towards the distortion end, but it lets you do a lot more fine tuning on that kind of softer overdrive sound. So if you wanted to make this permanent, you would literally just solder this resistor like this. Of course you'd trim it, but you just literally solder it like this. However, I'm going to put it on a switch, so what I will do is I will run two wires from this, run it to one of these switches, and then I'll put this resistor across the switch like this. So those two wires will come into the center two lugs. When it's in one position, it's going to go through the resistor. When it's in the other position, no resistor, so it's completely bypassed in stock. Then the second mod involves the two little diodes here. So can you see those two little clipping diodes right there? I'm going to basically take those diodes out, and I'm going to take two wires and send them again to the switch. And then on one side of the switch, I'm going to put these two diodes. And on the other side of the switch, I'm going to put these two LEDs. So what'll happen is in one position, it'll go through the diodes. In the other position, it'll go through the LEDs. Now, the LED clipping is part of the Turbo Rat. If you're familiar with the Turbo Rat, they just used LEDs in place of the, the 4148s here. So if you wanted to make this a permanent Turbo Rat, all you would do is unsolder those two and solder these in their places. Okay, so first things first, I'm going to solder a couple wires onto this pot that are going to go to this switch. And then I will go ahead and remove these diodes and solder a couple wires that will go to this switch. So let's do that. Okay, so now we've got our four wires in here. I can already tell that these are going to be a little bit long, but I can trim those easy enough. Okay, And so these two are gonna go to a switch with our resistor, and these two are gonna go to a switch with our various diodes. So again, these diodes that came out of here are perfectly fine. They're kind of hard to work with because they're small, but I'm just gonna go ahead and probably use these, be a little easier to work with, but I'll save those for a future project. Okay, so before we solder these, we wanna prepare our diodes here. So what we've got here is like this, right? What we're gonna do is instead, we're gonna put them like this so that the long leg and the short leg are together and the short leg and the long leg are together. We don't want the two short legs and the two long legs together, okay? We instead wanna flip it. So short leg to long leg, short leg to long leg. So after you twist those, you should have something kind of like that. And then we're gonna do the same thing with the diodes. So with our diodes, we're going to, these are both going the same way. We're gonna flip one of them like this, and then we're gonna twist the ends together. So we should have something like that. Now for our next step, what we're gonna do with this switch, we're gonna put the LEDs on one side of the switch and the diodes on the other side of the switch. So I can start with the diodes here. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna trim off this excess just to make it easier to handle. Okay, so now you can see our two diodes are on this side of the switch and they are asymmetrical like that. Let's do the same thing with the LEDs on the other side of the switch. So same thing over here, we just want to push those LEDs through and drop a little solder on each side. Okay, and so now we've got our switch. So in this position, the switch will be going through the diodes, and in this position, the switch will be going through the LEDs. Now our second switch will be a little bit easier to prepare because we only have to solder the one resistor. And I can solder that in place. All right, so very simple. So in this switch position, it will be adding the resistor to the pot, and in this switch position, it will not be adding the resistor to the pot. So let's go ahead and get these switches mounted in the case and get the wires wired up. Okay, so I drilled a couple holes right here for these switches. You can see where I did that, and I was able to do it without having to take out the power connector. But anyway, those switches are in there. You can see I don't have everything screwed in yet. I don't have the wires soldered. I just want to test fit here. But it seems to work. I'm not sure how well this is going to be seen by the camera, but nothing touches. The diodes on this side are quite close to that pot, but there should be enough room to bend them. The resistor has plenty of room. So there you go. So let's go ahead and solder up these two switches and then get it back together. Okay, I got it back together, and sorry about that. I thought I had the camera running while I was putting the board in, but anyway, I just put it back together the same way that it came apart, put all the washers and screws back on, and now you can see there's two additional switches. If I did it correctly, when both of them are in this position, it should be a standard rat, turbo rat, McPherson rat, and then McPherson turbo rat, I guess. But let's finish putting it together and test it out. Okay folks, I grabbed a guitar, got the Rat hooked up right here, and let's go ahead and hear the clean tone. So our clean tone sounds something like this. Now let's go to the bridge pickup. Okay, So now what I'm gonna do, let's see here, both switches are to the right, so that should be a standard Rat. So let's go ahead and kick it on. And you can see I've got the knobs more or less in the middle. I've got the volume up just a little bit. Now, by the way, when I switch to the LED clipping, it should get a little bit louder, so I'll fix all that in post. But here is our classic Rat. What I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna switch through the 4 different settings and play the same riff for you. Here's the standard Rat first. So now what I'm gonna do is, instead of just using the exact same settings on all 4, I'm gonna tweak with each one and find a setting that I like on each of the 4. So we'll start with the regular Rat again. So as you can hear, that's unlocking a lot of new sonic territory for the Rat. Obviously, you've still got that traditional Rat. So I'm really impressed with this McPherson Turbo Rat setting with both the switches this way. I mean, folks, this is a Rat. I mean, that's like, it's like the difference between a BD2 and a DS1. I mean, but even with the diode clipping, it's just really got like a nice kind of bluesy, like an overdrive, like a natural overdrive tone. Very different than you associate with the Rat. But what's so nice is then you just flip a couple switches here and okay, folks, I can't even tell you how happy I am with this mod. I've always been a huge fan of the Rat, and I like that with these 2 switches, you can get back to that original Rat tone just right away. But you can quickly go to a Turbo Rat, you can go to a McPherson Rat, or a new thing, the McPherson Turbo Rat, I guess. So it just gives you a lot more options with the Rat. If you're looking for kind of a bluesy overdrive, you've got that. If you're looking for that, you know, classic turbo Rat sound, you've got that. It's all just here with a bunch of flips of switches, and just makes the Rat a lot more flexible. Looks clean. I don't know. I'm super, super, super happy with it. I think that's my favorite mod I've done to date. But make sure you check out the playlist. That link is down in the description below. I've modded several different pedals and amps, and I kind of put all those in one playlist so you can find them. Now, if you like what I do on this channel, I would really appreciate it if you would hit that subscribe button for me. And if you like the video or you like this kind of content, do hit that like button, because that does really help me know what you like. And also it helps out the channel and, you know, talks to the YouTube algorithm, so to speak. So super pleased with today's video. Hopefully you enjoyed it, and I hope everyone has a great day.